hands up if you with it. Drop it.
Welcome to the MR Basketball Podcast. Today, we're kicking off our very first episode in English.
Yeah, excited to get started.
And what a perfect way to start. This show is all about taking a stack of information, articles, research notes, and doing a deep dive, extracting the key insights to get you well-informed, fast. Think of us as your guides through the noise.
And for this first deep dive, we're tackling something really, really fundamental to how basketball works today. Talent evaluation.
Oh, yeah. It's a world that's completely different now. I mean, think back to 1998. Dirk Nowitzki gets drafted by Dallas.
Right.
Having barely played in Germany's top league. Still kind of an unknown, especially stateside.
Totally. That's almost, unimaginable today. Elite clubs, NBA teams, they pour huge resources into scouting globally.
Eyes everywhere.
Exactly. Which means finding that, truly super prospect, it's incredibly rare these days.
So for this deep dive, our source material is some really interesting excerpts from an article called How to Evaluate Talent. It's by Rob Meurs, originally from FIBA Europe Coaching Articles.
Yeah, Rob Meurs, he's a fascinating figure, credited as basically the first guy to make international scouting a full-time job.
Wow, really?
Yeah, worked for NBA teams, NCAA programs, top European clubs. And what's interesting is his background, he wasn't just a scout, he was a player, a coach, and even a teacher developing curriculum. So he brings this really rounded perspective.
That makes sense. Sees it from all sides.
Yeah.
So our mission for you listening is to dig into Meurs' philosophy. How does he look at identifying young talent, developing it?
And maybe the big question, why do some players we label talented young just vanish?
Yeah.
While others, maybe less hyped, go on to have huge careers. What are the real factors? Let's get into it.
Okay, so where does Meurs even start with this?
Well, he kicks off with a really sharp point. You know that question everyone asks, why do so many promising U16, U18 players kind of fizzle out or disappear?
Yeah, you see it all the time.
His first response is basically to challenge the people asking. He says, were they really that talented? Or did we just label them talents when maybe they never truly had that top-level potential?
Putting it back on the evaluators, I like that.
And his second point, equally crucial, is what is successful?
Right. You've got to define your terms. Is success only making the NBA? Is being a EuroLeague star considered success?
Or, like the article points out, what about a long, solid career at a big European club? Real Madrid, maybe Fortitudo Bologna back in the day. That's a successful pro career, surely.
Absolutely. So evaluation isn't just this narrow hunt for the next LeBron or Giannis.
No, not at all. It's about finding players who can fit and succeed at various levels, different leagues, different roles.
Okay. And Meurs agrees talent isn't just one thing.
Right. We all chase this idea of the perfect player, the next Jordan, the next Dirk. But even those guys weren't perfect in every single aspect of the game.
True. So how does Meurs break down these different dimensions of talent?
He uses four main categories: physical talent, mental talent, skill level, and then game intelligence or feel for the game.
4 pillars. Okay, let's tackle the first one. Physical talent. Seems like the most straightforward.
It often is, yeah. It's usually the first filter, especially when looking at kids around, say, 15 or 16. And Meurs says you start by looking at the things that are really hard, maybe impossible to change.
The genetic stuff.
Yeah.
Height, wingspan.
Exactly. Size, length, bone structure, joint structure, even muscle fiber type, fast twitch versus slow twitch. You can't really coach that. Explosiveness, quickness. Those are seen as fundamental tools you either kind of have or you don't to a large extent.
But you can train some physical things, right? Like getting stronger.
Oh, definitely. Strength training, adding muscle mass, absolutely. You can do agility drills, maybe slightly improve coordination or quickness.
Okay.
But you're not changing someone's fundamental body type or making them significantly quicker if that initial burst isn't there. It's hard to train raw speed.
So Meurs looks the whole picture. Body type, agility, leaping.
Yeah, the whole physical profile. Quickness, strength, coordination, shoulders, bones, joints, body fat, muscle structure, hand size, foot size, arm length, leg length, height. All of it.
He mentions Darko Milicic, doesn't he? As someone with that almost ideal basketball physique.
Yeah, a great example of having incredible physical tools. Doesn't guarantee success, obviously, but it's a huge part of the potential.
Right.
The article even notes how some countries, like Serbia, apparently identify kids based on physical traits really early, like 10, 12 years old. Specialized coaches, specific tests.
Wow, that's intense. So the key takeaway on physical talent.
Meurs says it's the easiest part to evaluate quickly. You can get a pretty good read on someone's physical gifts, their raw tools, in just a few seconds or minutes of watching them move.
Okay, makes sense. Let's move from the body to the mind.
Yeah.
Mental talent.
Right. And this one Meurs puts firmly in the very difficult to change category.
Oh.
He calls it what goes on in their heads. And he admits, look, even the experts really struggle to accurately measure this or influence it or train it effectively.
This feels like the big black box in scouting. How do you know who has that mental edge?
It's super complex. Meurs divides it into 3 rough areas. First is work ethic and toughness.
Okay.
Can they handle pain, fatigue, physical play? He really values those tough, reliable guys who just won't quit. Maybe even a little nasty.
Like that phrase he uses, tough, nasty son of a gun who everybody hates to play against.
Exactly. Think Ben Wallace, maybe. That kind of player.
Love it. What's the second part?
Response to pressure and adversity. How do they handle losing or winning? Criticism, media hype, teammates messing up, bad calls, injuries. Do they crumble or step up?
Crucial. And the third?
This is the X factor. It's kind of hard to define, but Meurs thinks it's vital. It's that burning desire to win, that willingness to sacrifice pretty much everything else, social life, hobbies, sometimes even schoolwork for basketball. For these players, he says, it boils down to one thing, ME.
That sounds intense.
Yeah.
Almost selfish.
It can look that way on the court. They have immense self-confidence, not think they're the best, they know it. They're constantly pushing for tiny edges, like staying an hour after practice just for a 1% shooting improvement.
Wow.
Meurs notes this single-minded focus can make them seem social or selfish in a basketball context, but they aren't necessarily bad people off the court. He reckons this X factor is what separates the really good players from the truly elite.
So how does a scout even begin to figure this mental stuff out?
It's a lot observation, intuition, really. Watching their behavior on court, off court, talking to them, talking to their coaches, teachers, journalists maybe, looking at body language, concentration levels, how they react emotionally, their fighting spirit. Are they a leader or a follower? He even mentions things like shaking their hand, just observing how they carry themselves. Little clues.
A lot of reading between the lines then.
Totally. And Meurs makes it the point that a lot of these mental characteristics are pretty well formed by puberty. It's that nature-nurture mix, genetics and environment. That's why he stresses the importance of coaches working with younger players, up to maybe 15 or 16, focusing hard on behavior, mental training, discipline. He even floats the idea that getting physically stronger might help build mental toughness too.
Interesting connection. But the big picture on mental talent seems to be it's probably the most critical factor for reaching the absolute top.
Yeah, likely.
But it's also the one we understand the least about how to evaluate, predict, or even develop.
Exactly. It's a huge area, still full of unknowns.
Okay, pillar number 3, feel for the game. Game intelligence.
Yeah, this is all about decision-making on the fly. Having that instinct, that feel to make the best decisions, find the best solutions in a split second.
So not just knowing the X's and O's.
No, it's deeper. It's understanding the flow of the game, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, knowing your teammates, and knowing your opponents.
The article has some funny, well, maybe not funny, but telling examples of players lacking feel.
Oh, yeah. The big guy who thinks he's a point guard and just pounds the air out of the ball. Or the defensive stopper who suddenly starts forcing up bad shots. Or the guy who can't shoot, gets left wide open, and keeps launching threes.
Not realizing why he's open.
Exactly. And Meurs asks, can you really fix that fundamental lack of feel? It's a tough question.
And knowing teammates, too. Like who's hot, who to get the ball to, maybe who not to pass to in the post on their weak side.
Precisely. And knowing opponents, not just scouting reports, but really understanding them. Like Chris Mullin apparently studying opponents' go-to moves, or Jason Kidd knowing defenders' tendencies so well he could help his teammates exploit them, recognizing mismatches instantly.
It's also about understanding the game's concepts.
Right.
Running plays, anticipating the next pass, making the pass that leads to the assist, creating space, making reads, managing the clock.
All of that. And it varies by position, too. Point guards need to be like coaches on the floor, huge responsibility. Bigs need feel for post position, when to seal, what move to make, different kind of intelligence.
This feels less purely innate than physical gifts.
Yeah.
Maybe more trainable than the core mental stuff.
Meurs thinks so, yeah. He believes it can be trained, to an extent, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of time and experience. Through repetition in game-like scenarios, putting players in situations where they have to think, asking them why they made certain choices, watching film.
Okay.
And the source mentions some fascinating things like cognitive training tools, like that computer program based on Israeli fighter pilot training,
Oh,
adapted for basketball to improve anticipation and split-second decision-making. It shows you can potentially train that cognitive speed beyond just putting in practice hours.
that's really cool. So game intelligence,
Yeah.
partly natural, partly experience, partly trainable, but hard to evaluate quickly.
You got it. It takes time, careful observation, and really understanding the game yourself to see if a player is making good decisions consistently.
All right, final pillar.
Skill level. This one, Meurs says, is probably the least complicated to evaluate, at least initially.
Yeah.
Can they dribble, shoot? What's their range? Can they pass different ways? How are their defensive slides? It's more objective. You can see it.
So what's the catch then?
The catch is performing those skills effectively at a high level, especially under pressure, both physical and mental.
Ah, right. Like a youth player's killer crossover might just get bumped off course by a stronger pro defender.
Exactly. Or they might hesitate to use it in a big moment. So it's not just having the skill, it's the efficiency and execution under game conditions.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
That's key. Meurs talks about the ugly shot example, right?
Yeah. If a guy's form looks weird, but he hits 40% from three, is that a bad skill?
Good point. Results matter.
Efficiency is king. So
Sure.
the evaluator needs to ask, can this skill, even if it looks unconventional, be effective at the next level? Can it be improved?
What affects how much a player can improve their skills?
Well, physical limitations play a role. Coordination, joint flexibility can impact shooting mechanics, for instance, and just basic motor learning ability varies. Some players pick things up really fast, others need endless repetition.
But the positive side is skills are teachable.
Absolutely. And Meurs stresses they should be taught well, starting early, aiming for automatism, doing it without thinking, like driving a car.
Makes sense. He also mentions how basketball culture affects skill development.
Yeah, big time. He contrasts, say, the focus on fundamentals in former Yugoslavia with maybe some Western European approaches, or the European emphasis on passing versus maybe a more individual focus, sometimes seen in the U.S.
Right.
In places like Lithuania, where basketball is almost religion, players might spend hours just drilling one skill, good coaching, and, crucially, the player's own willingness to work are essential.
Okay, so we've got the 4 pillars: physical, mental, feel, skills. You identify a player who looks good across the board, but we still see so many talented kids not quite reach the top.
And that brings us to the whole other side of the coin, according to Meurs. The external factors, all the things outside the player's raw talent that can steer or derail a career.
The environment.
Yeah, and the choices made within it. He talks about making the right decisions in life and career, which is incredibly tough when the outcomes are so uncertain.
Like choosing the right agent, the right team, the right coach seems huge.
Absolutely critical. Does the player end up with a coach who genuinely wants to develop young talent? Or someone under intense pressure to win now?
Right, who might just use the young player to fill a gap, or worse, bench them if they make mistakes.
Exactly. Is it a good personality fit? Does the coach maybe misjudge the player's strengths, try to force them into a role that doesn't suit them, like making a tall wing play exclusively inside?
Playing time, too. Got to get minutes to develop.
Non-negotiable. And just the sheer volume of practice time, Meurs points out huge differences across countries. Some places practice way, way more than others. That impacts development potential directly.
Level of competition you play against matters too, right? Better to be challenged than dominate easily.
For sure. Surviving against older, tougher competition teaches you more. And the team's playing style, does it fit the player? An athletic runner won't shine in a slow, grinding system.
And what about players who dominate physically when young?
That's another factor. Some kids rely purely on being bigger or more athletic early on if they don't develop their skills alongside that.
Others can catch up.
Yeah, players who worked harder on skills might surpass them as everyone matures physically.
Then there's money and hype.
Oh boy. Often negative influences, Meurs suggests. Agents, advisors, sometimes even parents seeing dollar signs, pushing for contracts too early.
Before the player is really ready or has fully developed.
Right. He compares it to becoming a lawyer or doctor. You invest years in training before the big payoff. But in sports, the temptation for quick money is strong.
And the danger is the kid gets paid, thinks I've made it.
Stops working, loses that edge, that X factor.
And then they're gone after that first contract runs out.
It happens. Basketball is a business. It's tough. Teams need results. Young players can be vulnerable if they don't perform immediately. And the hype, especially in the U.S. media landscape.
Yeah, the constant next big thing talk.
It takes serious mental strength to ignore that and just keep working. Meurs tells their almost unbelievable story about the supposed 7'3" phenom in Kazakhstan.
Oh yeah, that was wild.
Reporter hypes him, scouts flock, agent shows curated highlights, media frenzy, gets drafted high, makes millions, then vanishes, apparently missing his goats back home.
A cautionary tale about the hype machine?
Absolutely. It shows how external pressure can completely derail things.
Cultural background also comes into play.
Definitely. Meurs suggests it shapes that mental talent.
Yeah.
He contrasts different national tendencies, Serbian confidence and fight versus maybe a more reserved Croatian approach.
Or Lithuanian toughness.
Yeah. Tough as nails, giving 150% basketball in their blood. Contrasted with maybe countries where there's less economic pressure, more focus on school, less inherent fight. It shapes mindset.
And the general environment, especially for international players. Culture shock is real.
Hugely impactful. Moving continents, language barriers, different food, climate, managing money, basic life skills like cooking or driving if they're young. So many things can go wrong that have nothing to do with basketball itself.
It's more than just practice and game.
Way more. It's the whole life package. Injuries are obviously a massive factor, too.
Yeah, unavoidable almost.
High-level sport takes a toll. Ankles, knees, back. Chronic issues or a single bad injury can end it all. Recovery is physically and mentally draining. You have to learn to trust your body again.
Then there's school, social life. Life happens.
Exactly. Priorities shift. Maybe parents push academics. Maybe relationships or other interests take over. Sometimes players just fall out of love with the grind, find the pro world too cutthroat, or just choose a different path.
Opportunity plays a part. Just getting seen in the first place.
Crucial. And luck. Meurs mentions just plain bad luck, being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Wow. When you list all those potential pitfalls, coaching, playing time, money, hype, culture, injuries, life choices, luck.
It makes you realize, as Meurs says, it's actually amazing that there are still players making it to the top.
That really flips the script. Instead of asking why talented players fail, maybe we should ask how any talented player actually succeeds against those odds.
It highlights just how difficult and rare elite success is. And ultimately, Meurs concludes, despite everything else, the most vital factor is the player themselves.
That internal drive.
Yeah. If they are truly talented and they genuinely want to be a player, he believes they will find a way, that X factor pushing through.
That makes sense. It comes back to the individual's will.
But he adds one last simple but maybe most important point.
What's that?
Basketball has to be fun. From the youngest kid learning to dribble to the veteran pro, if it stops being fun, if that joy disappears,
Then sticking with it through all the challenges becomes almost impossible.
exactly. Forget becoming a great player if you don't enjoy the process.
That's a great place to land. Talent evaluation is complex. Physical, mental, skills, feel, but even identify talent faces this gauntlet of external factors. Success is rare, driven by internal fire and ultimately fueled by a love for the game.
Well put.
Thanks for listening. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe for more episodes from MR Basketball.